Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. This is Hosea 4, that's Hosea Perek Daled, and this is Saul Weinreb, the host for your podcast. We ended Perek Gimel, Hosea 3, with a encouraging note that although there will be a period of exile, one day the people of Israel will seek out their God again and seek out their king David, and they will again fear God and receive His goodness in the end of days. We now, and as is very common in Hosea and in all of the prophets, they flip back and forth from encouraging, happy words to words of rebuke. So now, unfortunately, this chapter is one of rebuke. However, as always, very full of many, many very important lessons. Let's begin with verse 1. Shem'u divar Adonai b'nei Yisrael. Listen to the word of God, people of Israel. Now, it is important to note that he is specifically speaking to Yisrael as opposed to Yehuda, as Judah. In other words, the northern kingdom of Israel as opposed to the southern kingdom of Judah. That context will become clear later on in this chapter, but I just wanted to point that out now, that in general, Hosea is living in the northern kingdom and directing his rebuke to the people of the northern kingdom. So he's saying, listen to the word of God. Ki riv l'Adonayim yoshvei aretz, because God has an argument with the people of the land. He has a problem with them. He wants you to realize that you guys are doing something wrong and you need to fix it. What is the problem? Ki ein emes, there is no truth. Vi ein chesed, there is no kindness. Vi ein das Elohim ba'aretz, and there is no knowledge of God in the land. This is interesting because we compare. There are a lot of comparisons between Hosea and Yeshayahu, who were contemporaries, one in the northern kingdom and one in the southern. However, one thing Yeshayahu did not emphasize that much was chesed, which is usually translated as kindness or sometimes goodness. Yeshayahu emphasized tzedakah umishpat, justice and righteousness. Chesed is one step past that. In general, you can assume justice means justice, and justice has to be, as we know, blind. In other words, you cannot treat the rich better than the poor, but you also have to make the just decision whether a person is poor or not. Righteousness is not what you find in a court. Righteousness is the way a leader could treat and realize that sometimes people need more than justice. Sometimes you have to help an orphan, you have to help a widow, you have to help someone who's poor more because they need it. Kindness is a step beyond that. Tzedakah is somehow, there is some justice to it. Righteousness, there is justice to it. That person needs more, so you give him more. Kindness is a step beyond that. A kindness is given out of the goodnesses of one's heart. That is chesed, and that is what Hosea is saying now. There is no truth, and there is no chesed. And v'ein das Elohim ba'aretz. There is also no knowledge of God in the land. This das is very similar to what we found in Isaiah and Yeshayahu, where multiple times he chastised the people for not knowing God, for not studying, learning about God, and not studying and learning about His world. And what happens in such a world where there is no truth, where there is no kindness, and where there is no knowledge of God? Continue in verse 2, Alo v'chachesh, people swear falsely and lie, v'ratzoach, and they murder, v'ganov, and they steal, v'na'of, and they commit adultery. Paratzu, they have broken open. They have broken open with all of these things that we just listed, these terrible things. Bidamim nagau, and one life or one murder follows another, one after another after another. If we remember in Isaiah chapter 1:15, that he's also used that language, the hands filled with blood, damim, the language of blood. Al Kain, therefore, Hosea continues in verse 3, Al Kain te'eval ha'aretz v'umla al kayoshev ba, because the people are so depraved, the land and everything within it is going to mourn and everything will be will be lost, will be at a loss, will wither away. Everything, even the animals of the field of Of Hashemayim and the birds of the sky, thgey hayom, even the fish of the sea, even more than in the famous flood of Noah, even the fish in the sea, Asefu, will perish, will die. This is a very common theme we had in Yeshayahu, that when the people are corrupt, when the society is corrupt, nature around them becomes ruined. They ruin the animals, the fields, the forests, we had Yeshayahu talking about how chopping down the forests as being something terrible, that people were ruining the environment around them. That's what it happens in a corrupt society. Ach, ish al yorev vi al yochach ish. This is verse 4. However, a man, in other words, riv, the language riv, right, we just said in the beginning in Hosea, God has a riv, he has an argument. In other words, he feels there's something wrong and he wants you to be better, and he's arguing with you. He's telling you stop being bad and change your mind. We had earlier in Hosea, rivu be'imchem. Hosea told the people, argue with the nation, argue with the leaders, because it's time, you need to fix it, you need to become better. Ach ish al yorev, but over here we're saying that he, the one who is supposed to, and we'll see later, the one who is supposed to is the teachers, the leaders, the Navi, the prophets that are supposed to be Riv, that are supposed to be telling the people, arguing with them and telling them to be better. They don't speak to the Ish. Now, Ish is a language of a person who is a haughty and arrogant person. I think I'm a man, right? I'm the great guy. So, but the people are not giving, they're not being riv. They are not, the leaders are not telling them what to do. V'al yochach ish. And they are not criticizing them. V'amcha k'merive kohen. And your nation, the entire nation, right? They're acting like those who try to give rebuke, merive kohen, to the leader. Now the kohen is the one who's the priest. He is the haughty one, that in this example. He's the one who thinks he's so great. So you don't tell me what to do. I'm so great. And the people are all acting like that. They're all acting like an ish. This explanation of this verse is I got from Rabbeinu Yonah in his famous book Sharei Tshuva, where he brings this pasuk, he brings this verse as and interprets it the way that I just did. It's different than most of the commentaries, but I think it's beautiful, especially because, as we'll see in the rest of this chapter, how well this interpretation fits. That we're the Merive Kohen, the arrogant one. People think they're so great, so no one's giving them rebuke. That's the problem. When you're so haughty, you don't listen to rebuke, and people don't give you rebuke because they're afraid to. V'chashalto hayom, and therefore you are stumbling today. In verse 5, v'chashal gam novi imcha loyla. Now, hayom, most of the commentaries use this as day and night. Hayom does not really mean day. Hayom here means now. This v'chashalto hayom. It doesn't say bayom. So I'm not sure. I think the proper interpretation is, but now because you're so arrogant, you're not listening. Like we said in verse 4, you are stumbling. V'chashal gam navi imcha loyla. And the Navi, the one who is supposed to be telling you the rebuke, he is stumbling with you as if it's nighttime, it's darkness. V'damisi imecha, and therefore I am going to destroy. This word damisi here means destroy your mother, meaning your nation. If you recall, in the last chapter we said imcha is, and in the several chapters, you talk to the children, the people of the nation, to speak to imcha, your nation, to speak to the people. The imcha, the imecha, the mother refers to the nation as a concept, and the children are the people within the nation. So, nidmu ami, my nation, the mother, this is verse 6, the mother that I just told you about, nidmu, are being destroyed. Why? Mebli hadas, because they don't have knowledge. And why don't they have knowledge? Because the Navi, the prophet, is not teaching. It's Laila, it's darkness. Because the prophet is not teaching, you don't have that knowledge. Ki atoha da'as ma'asta, because you have made knowledge disgusting, and therefore v'em oscha mikahen li, I am making you, I don't want you. I am repudiating you from being my Kohen, from being my priest. As we know in the Torah, V'atem tiyu li mamlechet kohanim. I want you to be a nation of priests. But God's saying, no, I don't want you to be my priest. Because there is no knowledge, because there is no emes and truth, because there is no chesed and kindness, I don't want you. Because you're so arrogant that you can't listen to rebuke, because you've taken down the Navi, the prophet who's supposed to teach you can't even teach you. The Navi continues, and you have forgotten the Torah of your God. Therefore, eshkach ponecha gam oni. God says in terrible, frightening words, I will forget your children, meaning you, the nation, which I called you as the mother. You are forgetting. I will forget you. Kirubam kain chot uli. Because the more you became rov, the more that became rubam, the more that you became great, the more that you thought you were great, the more you sinned, because it was arrogance that brought you to sin. Kivodam, God says, their honor, their arrogance, that they thought they're so great, bikalon amir, I am going to switch it out for shame, for embarrassment. Chatas ami yochelu. Ami here means the mother again, right? It's referring to the nation, right? The nation is the mother. Chatas ami yochelu. They are eating, right? The mother usually feeds their children. The nation usually feeds the children food. But here, what are they eating? They're eating the sins of the nation. The nation is teaching them to be sinners. We're going to see again soon, several verses later, that the nation is teaching its children sin. That's what this is saying. Chatas ami yochelu v'el avonam yis'u nafsho. And for their sins, those children's sins, yis'u nafsho, he is raising his soul. Now, this is an extremely difficult verse to translate here. Who is this he over here? There are many, many different ways of saying this, who the he is. I am going to say two possibilities. I think that this he is talking about the Navi, the prophet, because Avonam Yis'u Nafsho, it is to their sin that they are raising his soul. They are making their leaders, the Navi who's supposed to be teaching them, they are making him into a sinner. Remember, this is especially poignant because if we studied in the first chapter how Hosea himself, God said, according to the rabbis, the tradition is that God asked him to marry a prostitute because he himself wanted to give up on the Jewish people. He himself wasn't ready to stand for them, to rebuke them, to teach them and bring them back to God. And God said, no, right? Just like you love your wife, even though they stray, I love my people, even though they stray. So go teach them. So over here, it's the Navi. Hosea seems to have this image here of the prophet himself is not doing his job, which is why Hosea now is trying to do his job. Right? And the people are carrying the prophet along. They're raising the prophet. That's one way of understanding this. Nafsho could also mean the nation itself. Now, if nafsho means the nation, then it's a little bit of a flip, because before the nation was referred to in the feminine language as the mother. Now we're saying that the people are carrying the nation of the soul of the nation in a masculine language, nafsho. But those are two ways that I'm going to look at it, and we'll see as we look at the next few verses. The people will be treated just like that Kohen before was treated. The Kohen before, who was arrogant and didn't listen to rebuke, that's how I'm going to treat the people. Ufakadeti alav dirachav. Now this he is the same he that we had nafsho in the verse before. So if nafsho meant the prophet, then what this means is, fakati alav dirachav, I will make him responsible for the ways of the people. I will make him the leader who didn't rebuke. I will make him responsible, because if he doesn't rebuke, he's responsible too. Uma'alolav ashivlo, and his plans of the nation, ashivlo, I will send it back to him to make it his responsibility, the Navi, the prophet. I'm going to go with that Perush, even though most of the Mefarshim, most of the commentaries look at this as the he being the Kohen. I don't think he is being the Kohen, because the Kohen here, the word he doesn't go back on Kohen. The Kohen was never the subject. The Kohen was used as a parable, a comparison. The people are like a Kohen, are like the Kohen, or like someone who tries to rebuke a Kohen. But he is the only he here is the Navi. That's the only singular he. And therefore, I think that when it says he, it's referring to the Navi, and therefore that's how I'm interpreting the pasuk, this verse 9, the way I interpreted it. We continue with verse 10. V'achlu v'lo yispa'u, the people will eat, and they will not be satisfied. His new, because that's what happens when you have arrogance. No matter how much you have, it's never enough. His new, they will be promiscuous, v'lo yifrotzu, but they won't grow, because you don't build families that way. You don't build children, grandchildren. You don't grow that way by when it ruins families, it ruins relationships, it ruins a productive society. That kind of promiscuous behavior. Because they left God, they left watching and keeping God's words, and they went to do their own thing. A short, quick statement that's so true. People that are promiscuous and drink wine and beer and get drunk, that takes away their heart. There's no more meaning left. Leiv referring to meaning, no more meaning left to anything. Ami be'etz o yish'al, my nation is asking his stick. Instead of asking advice from the Torah, instead of asking advice from God and from the prophet, they're asking of their stick. Umaklo yagidlo, and his staff is what tells him what to do. There's many different understandings of what this stick is. One is that the stick is referring to an avodah zarah, to idol worship. He's asking the stick, the tree, the wood that he worships. The stick could be a person carries a stick, but the stick shouldn't lead them. It's like a person being led by his stick. That would be, in other words, he's looking to nothingness. He's following the person that should be following him. Another way of understanding it. A stick could also be the Navi Sheker, the false prophets. But I think another way of understanding it is a person is be'etzo. He looks at his stick, the stick with which he oppresses others. The makal, the stick with which he swings at others. That is what they're asking. That's the advice they keep. They keep that kind of advice, that kind of life they live. A life of oppressing others. That's my problem. Ki ruach zenunim hito, because a promiscuous, a unfaithful spirit has caused him to make a mistake and think that this is the way he's supposed to live. Vayiznu mitachas Elohehem, and then they turned away from right underneath their own God, their real God. They left him. They left the real God, and they went to their stick, their staff. El Roshei HaHarim Yizabechu, and what did they end up doing? They went to the tops of the mountains to bring sacrifices to their idols, V'yalag va'osi kateru, and they bring incense in the high places, Tachas Alon v'livneh ve'elad, underneath the trees where they do these things, Kitov Silah, because they have nice shade, and they Alkein Tiznena benosechem, and in these places, this is where your children are being used as objects of molestation and promiscuity and immorality. V'chalosechem tene'afana, and tene'afna, and your daughters-in-law, your daughters and daughters-in-law, you're putting out for promiscuous purposes, for the purpose of worshiping the idols. Lo efkod al benosechem kizinena. I'm not going to blame the children that you put up there for immoral purposes, and your daughters-in-law that you put out there for these illicit, terrible purposes. They learned this from the society that they lived in. They learned this from those of you that turned away. That's where they learned it from their parents, from the nation that they grew up in. This is what they've seen among the people who themselves frequent the Kadeshos, the people that set themselves aside for immorality. And a nation that does not understand, remember, again, this is a reference to lack of knowledge, lack of study, that nation will fall. Imzonato Yisrael, Israel, if you turn away, Al Yesham Yehuda, don't bring Yehuda along with you. Remember, he's talking to the northern kingdom. Don't corrupt them too. V'al tavohu ha-Gilgal, and don't come to Gilgal, which is the place where they had their idol worship. V'al talu beit aven, and don't go up to the houses of iniquity. V'al tishba'u Chai Adonai, and don't start swearing by the name of God as if you're worshiping God when we all know that you're not, and we all know what you're really doing. Another interpretation of Imzoneh Israel al Yesham Yehuda is as follows: if you, Israel, are turning away from God, Israel, the northern kingdom, al Yesham Yehuda, don't blame them, don't blame the southern kingdom. It's the nature of people to always blame someone else for your problems. And it was the nature of the northern kingdom to blame Yehuda, to always point to them whenever they had a problem. No, it's them. Don't blame them. And then come to Gilgal and do your things and start swearing by God's name and pretending that you are something great when you're really not. It's you. Take responsibility. Ki kiparas orera, because you are like a paras orera. You are like a cow that has wandered off on its own. Sorar Yisrael. That is the same way the northern kingdom of Israel has wandered off on its own way. You left Yehuda. You wandered away like a cow that wandered away from its herd. Ata, now Yir'eim Adonai ki keves b'merchav. Now God has to bring you back. He has to corral you back like a sheep that's lost in a wide open space. An image of a sheep that's lost from the herd that has to be brought back by God. You're the one that left. You decided to leave. Don't blame Yehuda. Chavor atzavim Ephraim hanachlo. However, chavor atzavim, Ephraim is attached to his atzavim, to his foreign images, his idols. Hanachlo, leave him alone. He's gone. Source of he has turned so much to liquor, to wine. Haznei hiznu, he has turned so much away from God and towards immorality. Ahavu hevu, they have fallen in love with the gifts. Kalon magineha. What is their what they are now gifting themselves with is now kalon, is embarrassment and shame. Tzora ruach osa b'chnafeha. The evoshu miziv chosam. The ruach, the wind, is surrounding her with her wings, and what is that wind? The evoshu miziv chosam, and they will be shamed with their sacrifices that they're bringing to those idols. Thank you so much for listening to Hosea chapter 4. Looking forward to studying chapter 5 with you together.